Life often places us in moments where it feels like we are climbing a fog-covered mountain. Every step uncertain, every turn unseen. There is no one beside us, no cheering voices, no eyes to witness our struggle. We keep moving forward, honoring the promise we made to ourselves. Yet the world around us remains hauntingly silent. No one acknowledges the battles we fight in secret, the small victories that pass unnoticed. And in those moments, a question arises: is it worth it if no one sees our effort? But that is exactly where the deepest form of strength begins to emerge, the kind that doesn't rely on recognition, praise, or validation. It is born in solitude, in the silent spaces where your soul learns to stand firm. Carl Jung once said that every rebirth begins with dissolution. When you find yourself without a crutch, without a companion, it is not the end. It is the preparation for something far greater. When the world turns silent, when familiar conversations no longer excite you, and those who once walked alongside you feel distant, know this: growth is quietly at work. You might still perform your routines, engage with life on the surface, but inside, change is stirring. Most people are afraid of this stage. They run from it, distracted by noise and activity. Yet, Jung described this as the night sea journey, the dark night of the soul, where separation from the old world becomes a necessary passage to enter the new. The sense of loneliness you feel is not about being physically alone. It is about being disconnected from everything that once defined your belonging. You smile, you interact, yet the world seems foreign. You are left only with yourself, and that is exactly where the transformation begins. Many interpret this loneliness as failure, a sign of being lost. But in truth, it is the soul shedding the persona, the mask that once helped you fit in. Feeling misunderstood, isolated, unseen, it is proof that you are approaching your true self. Jung believed that real maturity emerges not in the company of others, but in the courage to face oneself in silence. When the noise fades and you are forced to confront your inner voice, the work begins. The temptation is strong to distract yourself with business, relationships, or entertainment. But avoidance only enlarges the emptiness. Loneliness does not punish, it deepens, reshapes, and rebuilds from within. I recall a woman who, after a difficult divorce, found herself in complete disorientation. She had been surrounded by laughter and social gatherings, but when everything fell apart, her apartment became eerily quiet. Instead of filling the void with external distractions, she chose to sit with the silence. At first, for a few minutes, then for hours, gradually facing the questions she had long avoided. Cooking for herself, reading, journaling, reflecting, she discovered that silence was no longer the enemy. It was the doorway to her own self. That is what Jung referred to as the meeting with oneself, the moment when running stops and coming home begins. Without anyone to lean on, pressure emerges, forcing discipline, focus, and inner steadiness. Each choice becomes conscious, each action a promise to oneself. And as promises are kept, the foundation of inner strength is built. Loneliness is the gym of the soul. It forges resilience, patience, and clarity. Like an oak tree in winter, stripped of leaves and exposed to cold winds, the roots grow deep unseen. Humans experience the same process. Every lonely season is a winter of the soul, but patience allows the spring of transformation to emerge. In chaos and disorder, there is hidden order. If you stand in the dark of loneliness, remember that it is not weakness. It is a sign that the old path is dissolving, making way for the new. The moment you stop waiting for someone to lift you up, you discover a fundamental truth: all strength, all peace, all love that you sought outside has always resided within you. And when you tap into it, you do not merely rise, you begin to walk in your own light. Loneliness teaches resilience. It instills a strength that no applause can grant, no hand can give. Each night you endure, each quiet battle you face, shapes you into someone unshakable. When the world goes silent, when no one recognizes your effort, remember, you are building a core of unwavering strength. You are becoming your own anchor, your own guiding light. And it is from this solitude that growth radiates. When you stop relying on others for reassurance, when you embrace silence instead of fearing it, you awaken the ability to stand alone. The most profound lessons occur not in comfort, not in company, not in applause, but in the quiet, in the unseen hours, where the soul, undisturbed, learns its own depth. In these moments, every step becomes deliberate, every breath intentional. You learn that dependence on others for emotional validation is fleeting, fragile, and unreliable. Real strength comes from cultivating self-reliance, self-trust, and a profound connection with your own inner being. It is in learning to embrace your loneliness rather than fleeing it that you find the capacity to rise in a way no one else can lift you. The process is gradual, subtle, and invisible to the outside world, but internally it transforms you into someone who no longer seeks confirmation from others. You begin to feel whole even when the world remains indifferent. And it is from this place that you will rise, ready to face challenges, not as a dependent on external support, but as a soul fortified by its own resilience. In essence, the journey of solitude is the first step in learning to rise when no one is there. It is a passage of self-discovery, resilience, and awakening. Carl Jung's wisdom reminds us that transformation begins in silence, in darkness, and in isolation. The power to rise, to endure, and to thrive does not come from the outside. It has always been within. All you need is the courage to step into your own strength, to trust your own process, and to walk forward even when no one is watching. After learning to face solitude and embrace the silent strength it brings, life introduces a new challenge, learning to rely on yourself emotionally. For many, the exhaustion comes not from being alone, but from expecting someone else to fill the emptiness, to reassure, to validate. Carl Jung observed that loneliness is not simply the absence of people, it is the inability to communicate what matters most to you. When we seek others to soothe our discomfort, each silence, each delay, each absence feels like collapse. It is not love we are seeking. It is dependence, a crutch we mistakenly believe is essential for survival. The next stage of growth requires discovering how to comfort yourself, to become the one who meets your own needs without constantly turning outward. I recall a woman from a therapy session who confessed that every time her partner didn't reply to her messages immediately, she felt panic rising, as though her existence depended on his response. She understood that the fear was not about him, but about the childhood programming she had internalized, feelings that were dismissed, needs that were ignored. Her unconscious had learned that her emotions only mattered if someone else validated them. Jung called this pattern the trap of emotional projection. When we rely on others as mirrors to reflect our worth, we give away the power that belongs within. Every withdrawal, every absence, every unmet expectation becomes a source of instability. But the truth is, no one can be your permanent savior. Emotional independence begins the moment you choose to regulate your own feelings, to listen to your own voice, and to console yourself when sadness arises. To soothe yourself is not coldness, it is liberation. Place a hand on your heart, breathe deeply, and whisper, "I am still here." That simple act is the first step in emotional self-sovereignty. It is when you stop merging with collective emotions and begin to honor your own that individuation begins. The ability to sit quietly, to enjoy your own presence, to feel complete without external validation is the highest form of freedom. Freedom from the need for approval, freedom from the fear of abandonment. Jung taught that dependence is often a shadow of love, a disguised fear of being left alone. The immature ego craves confirmation. It seeks others to prove its worth. But the more you look inward, the more you realize that all you ever needed to survive, to thrive, and to grow was already within you. You can give yourself the care and recognition that you once sought from others. In doing so, you awaken a self-reliance that allows you to love freely, because your love is no longer desperate, no longer dependent on response or acknowledgement. The lessons of emotional independence continue with another subtle yet crucial practice. Stop complaining. Complaining is a trap of the ego, a way to anchor yourself in victimhood and avoid taking responsibility. Every time we voice discontent, even subtly, we reinforce the belief that we are powerless, that circumstances control us. Jung described this as the shadow of self-pity. When trapped in complaint, we stop acting, remaining stuck in the same questions. Why me? Why now? The real question to ask is, what can I do with this? Transforming complaint into conscious action shifts energy from stagnation to empowerment. Life, like a river, flows whether we curse it or not. The current may grind and crash against us, yet it polishes us, shaping us into clarity and strength. Complaining gives temporary relief, but keeps us trapped. Acting transforms hardship into growth. Each small action is a step forward, a reclamation of power. Once we learn to stop complaining, we move towards self-validation. Here is where we begin to act, not for recognition, not for applause, not to be seen, but simply because it is the right expression of who we are. Self-validation is the inner acknowledgement that our efforts matter, that our journey is real, and that we are worthy without external approval, just like Cassandra, who spoke the truth without being believed. We learn to honor our own voice, even when the world turns away. This stage of self-reliance teaches patience and resilience. We no longer measure our worth by others' reactions. We no longer wait for someone to tell us we are enough. Each task completed, each moment of discipline maintained, each instance of emotional steadiness becomes a building block of inner strength. Life silence becomes a mirror, reflecting our perseverance back to us, and slowly we internalize the truth. Our value is inherent and independent of the world's acknowledgement. As we cultivate this emotional self-sufficiency, we also learn the art of rising from setbacks with courage and integrity. Failure may still arrive, it will test our strength, but now we face it equipped with inner resources. The moments of invisibility, the silence, the lack of recognition, all become opportunities to reaffirm our self-reliance. By acting without waiting for external approval, we discover the profound satisfaction of being our own guide, our own source of encouragement. From this foundation, discipline emerges naturally. We learn to act even when inspiration fades, even when motivation seems distant. Willpower, not fleeting emotion, becomes the driving force. Jung emphasized that freedom is found not in doing what we feel like, but in doing what is necessary. Those who cultivate this inner authority discover that each step forward, however small, compounds into mastery over the self. The ability to act despite discomfort, to persist despite solitude, is a defining feature of the soul's evolution. Through these experiences, the person who once feared loneliness and invisibility transforms. They no longer seek someone to comfort them or validate their existence. They have become their own anchor, their own source of strength, and their own witness. Emotional independence allows them to navigate life with stability, grace, and an unwavering sense of self-worth. They can love, they can connect, yet They are no longer dependent, no longer defined by the responses of others. By learning to stand alone, soothe themselves, stop complaining, and validate their own efforts, individuals begin to rise even when no one is there. The path is quiet, often invisible to the outside world, but deeply transformative. Each small step forward, each moment of self-soothing, each deliberate choice to act independently creates a foundation of unshakable resilience. And so, the journey continues. After embracing solitude and cultivating emotional independence, the next lesson is clear. True strength does not come from external validation. It comes from honoring your own journey, even when the world is silent. You rise not because others lift you, but because you have learned to lift yourself. You endure, you act, and you grow, all from within. This is the essence of rising even when no one stands beside you. The path of inner mastery that prepares you for the next stage of your transformation. Once you have embraced solitude and cultivated emotional independence, life introduces yet another essential lesson. The discipline of action without reliance on external validation or fleeting inspiration. Many people wait for motivation to strike, for the perfect moment to appear, or for someone to cheer them on. But true growth, as Jung emphasized, comes from the courage to act even when you do not feel ready. Inspiration is ephemeral, coming and going like the wind, but willpower is constant. It is the engine that carries you forward when all else fades. Acting consistently, despite doubt, fear, or exhaustion, builds a deeper strength than any applause ever could. Even after rising from loneliness, after learning to soothe yourself and stop complaining, life will test your perseverance. You may stumble, fail, or feel invisible despite your dedication. Failure is not defeat. It is an invitation to deeper self-awareness. Every fall exposes areas of yourself that remain unintegrated, fears unaddressed, or habits unchecked. Jung described failure not as punishment, but as illumination, revealing the shadows within us so we can confront and transform them. When you rise after a setback without waiting for recognition, your inner world expands. You strengthen your trust in your own abilities, your own resilience. Consider the story of a woman who ran a small business. After years of dedication, betrayal left her nearly broken. Yet, rather than giving in to despair, she paused to reflect. If this is not an ending, what is it teaching me? Through journaling, introspection, and small steps forward, she rebuilt her business, not as a copy of what was lost, but as a stronger, steadier version. Each failure became a lesson, each obstacle a teacher. She learned that true power emerges not when life is easy, but when we rise after falling repeatedly without external support. This principle applies not only in business, but in every aspect of life. Life's challenges will continue, but those who develop the habit of rising through their own effort learn to transform pain into progress. Neuroscience even supports this. When we face difficulties and take conscious action despite fear, our prefrontal cortex activates, releasing dopamine and reinforcing resilience. In contrast, inaction and rumination release stress hormones, keeping us trapped in fear. Action, even small, transforms the internal landscape and rewires the brain toward growth. Rising quickly after setbacks also teaches the art of detachment. When no one praises your efforts, when recognition is absent, you learn to act not for reward, but for integrity. The value of your actions becomes inherent rather than conditional. This is where self-validation deepens. You no longer need external witnesses because your own acknowledgement is sufficient. Every step taken, every decision made, becomes a testament to your inner authority and autonomy. In the process of rising independently, discipline begins to form naturally. Acting consistently without waiting for moods or motivation builds a character anchored in purpose. Jung emphasized that willpower is the energy that organizes the psyche, allowing action in service of lasting meaning. When you cultivate this capacity, life no longer controls you through emotion. You direct your actions consciously, guided by values, integrity, and commitment. The ability to persist despite fatigue, doubt, or lack of recognition is what separates transient effort from enduring achievement. Many of the greatest achievers, whether in art, science, or personal development, succeeded not because of continuous inspiration, but because they acted even when enthusiasm was low. Angela Duckworth's concept of grit illustrates this beautifully. Persistence over time, guided by purpose rather than excitement, produces extraordinary results. Those who act out of willpower rather than fleeting emotion, cultivate mastery over themselves and their circumstances. At this stage, the person begins to understand a paradox. The world may remain silent, unseen, or indifferent, yet their progress is real and measurable. The recognition they once sought outside has shifted inward. By acting consistently and with discipline, they build a life of integrity and reliability. Each step, each effort, each small victory adds up, forming the unseen scaffolding of resilience and competence. Moreover, the ability to act without relying on inspiration strengthens character in ways comfort never can. When life presents obstacles, unexpected losses, or silence, you no longer collapse under pressure. Instead, you respond, guided by your own inner compass. You learn that motivation is a bonus, not a requirement. Discipline becomes your anchor, enabling you to navigate uncertainty and maintain progress even in the absence of support. This stage of the journey also teaches a subtle yet profound lesson. You don't need anyone to understand you. After years of silent effort, after remaining faithful to your path despite setbacks, you may realize that recognition, validation, or comprehension from others will not always arrive. Yet this absence does not diminish your progress. It is in these quiet moments, when the world remains unaware of your efforts, that the deepest growth occurs. Those who rise in silence cultivate a power that is independent of external perception. Carl Jung's wisdom reminds us that all answers ultimately reside within. True understanding, true mastery, does not come from others' eyes, but from attentive engagement with your own heart and mind. By ceasing to rely on external acknowledgement, you become the center of your own universe. You learn that the deepest validation comes from your awareness of your own effort, your own integrity, and your commitment to your personal path. The journey inward is where the soul gains clarity, focus, and resilience, independent of the opinions or awareness of others. In this phase, creative energy, love, and wisdom emerge not from being understood, but from cultivating a steadfast presence. Like a lighthouse standing alone on a rocky shore, you do not demand attention or seek recognition. You simply shine, and your light becomes a guide for those who are lost without effort or expectation. This is the ultimate lesson. By embracing self-sufficiency emotional discipline, and consistent action, you become a source of light and stability, not only for yourself, but for the world around you, silently, authentically, and profoundly. By acting without dependence on inspiration, by rising after failures, and by trusting in the inherent value of your own efforts, you build a life rooted in self, reliance, and purpose. You discover that your power has always existed within, waiting to be claimed. Every step taken in solitude, every act of discipline, every choice to rise independently, shapes you into someone capable of standing tall, even when no one is beside you. The journey is not easy. It demands courage, patience, and unwavering commitment. But it is through this process that true strength is forged, an inner fortitude that does not rely on recognition, external guidance, or temporary motivation. This strength allows you to rise in silence, to act despite fear, to trust yourself when the world seems indifferent, and to become the person you were always capable of being. After mastering solitude, emotional independence, and disciplined action, the final stage of rising, when no one is there, reveals a profound truth. You do not need anyone to understand you. Throughout life, we search for acknowledgement, for comprehension, for validation. We want someone to witness our struggles, our growth, our victories. Yet, in the deepest moments of personal transformation, the world remains silent. People may not notice your efforts, recognize your progress, or comprehend the weight of your journey. And in that silence, you are confronted with the choices, despair, or awakened to the power that resides within. Carl Jung once said, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. All the answers, all the guidance, all the reassurance you have sought externally exists inside you. You only need stillness and attention to perceive it." Once you realize this, you begin to stop seeking understanding from others. The desire for someone else to see your journey is replaced with the inner recognition that your own efforts, your own courage, and your own resilience are enough. You begin to trust yourself in ways no external validation could ever teach. It is a paradox. By stopping the search for external acknowledgement, you actually begin to be seen, not because people suddenly notice, but because your presence radiates authenticity and integrity. Like a lighthouse standing firm amidst crashing waves. You no longer call attention to yourself. You simply exist with quiet strength, and those around you feel the steadiness of your light. This is the essence of rising even when no one stands beside you. Your impact is no longer dependent on approval, but on the invisible power of your own being. At this stage, you realize that the journey is not about being invincible or unbreakable. It is about becoming authentic, honest with yourself, and consistent in your pursuit of growth and integrity. Every silent effort, every choice to persist without acknowledgement becomes a brick in the foundation of your inner strength. You learn to trust the process, to honor the small victories, and to recognize the value of your own journey. The validation you once sought outside is replaced with a profound inner knowing you are enough, simply because you acknowledge yourself. Consider the story of a young painter who had spent years creating art to meet trends, to gain recognition, or to sell. Eventually, she fell into creative exhaustion, disconnected from her own inspiration. Seeking solitude, she rented a small house by a lake, removed all external influence, and began painting purely to listen to her own soul. In those quiet, unseen moments, her art transformed. It became raw, alive, and full of personal expression. By letting go of the need for external validation, she discovered her own voice and power. When she returned to the world, others finally recognized her genius, not because she sought their attention, but because she had first acknowledged her own worth. This is the ultimate lesson. True guidance, love, and wisdom come not from being understood, but from accepting yourself fully. When you stop seeking someone else's comprehension, you create a center of inward gravity. Your presence alone becomes guidance and inspiration. You no longer bend to the expectations or opinions of others. You operate from your own integrity and vision, and the world, silently or indirectly, responds to that authenticity. In embracing this independence, you also learn to harmonize contradictions within yourself, fear with courage, pain with healing, doubt with clarity. You no longer require external witnesses to validate your emotions, your choices, or your progress. The silence that once felt isolating now becomes fertile ground for self-discovery and empowerment. Every fall, every setback, every lonely night, and every invisible struggle contributed to building a foundation that cannot be shaken by the opinions or absence of others. As you continue along this path, you realize that real love, true connection, and deep creativity do not require understanding from anyone else. Acceptance begins with yourself. Carl Rogers observed that when you fully accept yourself as you are, transformation becomes possible. You can be loved, appreciated, and influential